Okay, so open up InDesign, and what you'll see are the uh, the basic kind of layout that you see in Illustrator and also Photoshop, where you have a set of tools. Along the left side, you have the more detailed set of kind of adjustments that you can make according to that tool up along the top. And then you have over here off to the side a series of panels and windows here that deal with layers and pages and text items and that sort of thing. So very much like Photoshop and InDesign, opening up this window allows you to open up a series of other of panels and controls that work over here on the right hand side. A couple of things that you'll want to immediately turn on is go down to Styles, and you'll want to definitely use paragraph styles. And when that opens up, you'll also get character styles, so you'll get both of those. So what this does is allows you to build one way of the way you want your text to look. So basically, like in Microsoft Word, you have those text styles that you can choose: normal, heading 1, heading 2. These are the same kind of tools that you can do, and you can create your own, okay, off on this side. And what I highly recommend you doing that and using those styles, because that way, if you need to make a quick adjustment, you can make the adjustment through the whole board just by changing the style here rather than having to go and update every single piece of text. It adds consistency. It just looks much, much better. So make sure that you use the styles. So once we have that, another thing that I want you to look at over here is to go up to Pages. So this has layers and it also has pages. So the way that, that InDesign is organized are you have these templates called master pages, which basically allow you to kind of create a layout or a grid or certain elements that would happen on every single page. So let's say you had 4 boards and you wanted your name and the studio number on each of those 4 boards. Well, you could put that on the master page, and then every time you create a new board, it would automatically have those words on there, and it would automatically also have maybe the grid associated with it. And then underneath this line here is where all your pages will be. Okay, so let's go through and make a new page. So we go to File, New, and you want to choose a document. Books and libraries are more advanced features that we won't need to concern yourself with. Perhaps later in your career you will, but for now you don't. So we'll create this new document, and then you have a series of intents. So whether it's for print or digital publishing, let's say for print for now. Number of pages to start with, I think is 1 is fine. And then let's go to page size, and let's right now let's just do letter. And then you'll have this orientation where it'd be landscape or portrait. Let's make this one landscape for now rather than portrait. And so columns, we could automatically put in the number of columns and what our gutter is and some margins that will be around the side. For now, let's just keep them in the default. They should be defaulted right now. So we'll click that, and we've got our first page. Now you'll start to see here that we have a master page here, and then we have a page down here. Okay? So from now on, if we want to create a new page, so let's say that this is our first board and we know that we're going to have 2 more boards, we can just go down here to the bottom where it says create new page, and we created a new page. So now we have 2 pages. Now you'll notice that it has this little A, and that's saying that the template for a master, which is this template here, is applied to that page. So if we want, let's edit this master page. So let's double click on that master page, and now that this is highlighted, that's showing that we're editing this master page. So anything that we put on here is going to show up on these pages down here. So let's say I am going to create a text box. So I'm going to, oh, you guys can't see that. Let me move that over. So I'm going to create a text box. And so I'm just going to click and drag out a text box. And then I'm just going to type so, and you'll see that it automatically started to be put up on these other two pages. So that's the beauty of how this text box works, is that whatever we do in this master page will come up on any other page that's below that. So this is really good for like page numbers and titles and things like that that are going to be consistent on every single page. Another kind of thing to note about that though is if we go, I'm going to double click down here and try to edit this, you'll notice that if I try to click on this, it won't allow me to. It's locked. So those master page elements are locked on this on the child pages down here. Okay, and those can be overridden, but you generally don't want to override them because then it becomes a jumbled mess. So be very clear about what's going to be, kind of consistent on your master pages. Okay. So now that we've seen kind of how to create a text box, let's go back up to our master page. Now we want to start to maybe lay out a grid system for this page. Couple of things to do. You'll notice that that this is a weird ruler right here. So it's obviously not inches, and it's based in points, which is an old school layout measurement tool. So it would be points of text is how they would measure everything as relative. We can go to InDesign, go to Preferences, and we can go down to Units and Increments, and we can start to change our ruler units. So we can change those to inches so that it's a little bit more understandable for us. Now you'll probably already understand points of fonts. You understand 12-point font, 10-point font. So we can keep that at those point fonts at the same. Okay, so I wouldn't necessarily need to mess around with those. There's also all kinds of other settings that you can get in here that that if you want to change as a system, you certainly can. Most of the time, you're messing around with these grids. So this will allow you to turn on a grid that underlies for quick layout functions. And there are some other things in here that we could look at in terms of dictionary and spelling. You can add words into your spelling. You can track changes, do some file handling. But those are all things that you probably don't need to mess with too much right now. But now that we have this, we can see that we have these rulers up here. Now the rulers work just the same way with Illustrator as in InDesign. We can create guides by clicking on the ruler and dragging down, and we can create a guideline from here and here. And so these guidelines allow us to help start to lay out our page. So we've got a basic kind of 9-point grid here, and if I select on one of these, you can see over here that I can adjust this to be where I want it. Let's say I want this at 4 inches, and I want this one at 8. Okay, so we have this kind of laid out in a 2-2-1. let's say I want this one to be 3, and this one to be 6. Okay. So we can lay out a series of grids and guides in that way. And they're selectable items that can be selected and deleted as well. The other way that we can do this is by creating guides, going layout, create guides. And this one is nice because we can say, let's click on preview here, and we can say, all right, I want 3 rows, and I want 3 columns. That's great. And then the gutter is basically the spacing in between these. So if we thought about this as an image in between here, that image would have a gutter around it, which isn't a bad idea. So if we just wanted a simple kind of 9 square grid, there we have it. It's very easy. The pieces are made already. But what I like to do is usually, if my overarching theme is a 9 square grid, is I'll actually increase that so that I'd have basically a little bit smaller units to work with. So I have some variation in between here. So I've gone from 3 to 6. And so now I have some options about where I place things and how I kind of move things, and it would still be on this underlying grid. So if we just click create, now I can start to snap these things to this image. I can also create over here, let's say we'll start to lay out some rectangles. Let's fill that. But here, if we do it in the smaller piece, we have some operations that we can move around, and we can adjust these things around to fit our goals. If we're going to have multiple pages and we want to have some slight variations in how we lay out things, this allows us to do that. But basically, the overview would be that what we're trying to do is create a system that allows us to just basically utilize this 9 square grid. I'm just holding down the Alt key to copy these things. So if we have that basic piece, then if we want to create more text, let's say down here, click and drag. And then we can do this type fill with placeholder text. And what that does is helps sometimes just put in kind of gobbledygook text to help you lay out and make sure that it starts to look right, that everything starts to be composed when you're putting together the master page. You'll notice that as we've been changing, all of these other pages have been changing as well. Okay? So here's the basic layout. Choose a grid, lay out a grid, utilize that grid. You can't go wrong with 3 or 5 columns, either one of those. And you can split them by doubling it up so that you have some more variations if you would like, so that we could do certain things like this. Like I could squeeze a little bit of text here, and still within that grid system, I'm able to put maybe a couple of more images down along this side, maybe diagrams, but it's still kind of pertaining to the overall grid. Okay? The grid system is there to help you. If you work within it, you'll generally get better kind of product because you won't have to fight for alignments and everything. It just helps you kind of place these things. Okay, so a couple of other things we need to learn are these boxes. So everything, all these contents are built into these content tools. And this content boxes basically are agnostic about what they are. They can be a text box or they can be a graphic box by just what you put into them. So if I click on the type tool and click into that and click there, then it's going to become a text box. But what I want to show you is how we get images in here. So we'll go to File, Place, and let's say let me just put one of these things in here. Okay, so I've placed an image in here, and you'll notice that it's a large image, so it's basically filled the whole screen. We can't see what it is. If I change this box, I'll uncover more of it, but I'm actually not changing the size of it. So you have to think about, if I click on this little center button, that starts to show the extent of this other piece. So think about it as a container that's basically cutting out, and the image is behind it. So here's my container, and then behind that frame is that image, and I can move that image around and it's going to be cut out where that frame is. But what we can do is right click and go to fitting, and we have some options about how to fill up that frame. So we can fill the frame proportionally, or we can fit the content proportionally. Generally you want to use these proportional tools because otherwise it skews it and it would change the aspect ratio. So if we fit content proportionally, now we see that the image is fit into the frame, but the frame itself, it's not fitting to the outlines of the frame that I want. So my other option is I could go fill frame proportionally, and it will fill it up, but now I can click and drag this, and you can see here's the outline of that image, and I can move this, just quickly move and adjust this kind of tool to fill that out the way I want. So that's the most kind of two basic principles that that you want to utilize and look at. There are some other options in here in terms of come on, select it. There we go. In terms of effects and transforming, and again, just remember that the way that you're moving this thing the frame does not really care about the image inside it. Okay? So when you move this, it's not going to scale it or do anything like that. You have to do that separately. Okay? And you can do that by clicking this button, and when you see the orange, now if you start to take and move this around, yes, you will scale that. And holding this shift key keeps it in proportion. Okay? So that's the basics of InDesign in terms of how it puts together, how you utilize it to put together an image. So we've done all of this on the master page, and so it's all shown up here, but we can't edit any of these things. If you use Control Shift, or if you're on a Mac, Command Shift, you can click on this, any one of these items, and now it's overridden from that page. So now you can, if it was a master item, it's no longer a master item. But be aware that if I change this thing around, so I've moved this over, and then I come over here and make some change. Or let's say I move this one. You'll see that the one that we changed did not change. Okay, so just be aware that if you start to break off master item pieces, then that could be a problem for you. I typically work and lay out the master page, and then I would take these items here, let's say, and cut them, Control or Command X, and then go down into the master page and do Edit, Paste in Place. And now I have the pieces that I want. So now I have them in terms of the text. It's non-selectable, but now I have these basic elements that I can utilize to put together the page. And if I just want to add a page, I can just continue to add pages down here. If I want to delete a page, delete a page. So what I want you to do is for this evening, there's a couple of YouTube videos on InDesign. I want you to watch those two. And then I want you to pick a board, find a presentation board that's outside in the internet. And then what I want you to do is figure out its grid and create that grid utilizing just these text box elements. So if this is a rendering, just make a black box or a gray box that shows that that's where this rendering was. So if I was looking at this here, I would set up this grid to replicate this piece, and then I would utilize one kind of gray box here, and then I might use another box here to show this, and another box to show each of these elements. Just build that page, choose one, and put it together so that you get a handle of how to utilize and get a feel for utilizing InDesign in its interface, and have that ready to go and have that turned in. We'll have that due 8 a.m. on Wednesday. Okay. We'll have an inbox ready to go for that. Pretty simple. And then make a choice of how you want to, which set of elements do you want to work on your studio project, or whether you want to work on continue working utilizing the stuff that you've built here in this class to put together the presentation boards and the portfolios, and we'll work on that presentation boards this week. Yes?
When we turn it, when we turn it in on Wednesday, do you want the original one and the one that we created?
Yes. Yep. Put those together in a zip file and put them up there. Yep. Okay. Any questions? All right.